We are opening today's deep dive on some news that really resonated across the country this week, a profound loss for public life and for journalism. On Tuesday, December 30th, 2025, Tatiana Schlossberg passed away. She was 5 years old. And this news, it carries just an immense weight, not just because she was the granddaughter of President John F. Kennedy, but because of the sharp intellectual career she built entirely on her own.
It's a truly devastating announcement. The news came from the John F. Kennedy Presidential Library and Museum. They issued this very brief, incredibly moving statement that just said, "Our beautiful Tatiana passed away this morning. She will always be in our hearts." So our mission today is to really honor that life and her work by going deep into the sources. We're going to look at her life, her distinguished career, and maybe most importantly, that powerful essay she published just a few weeks ago.
Right, and that's what this is. For you, the listener, this is a way to understand a life that was just defined by this incredible dedication, this intellectual honesty, and in the end, just immense personal courage. So let's start with some of the foundational context. She was born May 5, 1990, in New York City. Her parents are Caroline Kennedy, the former U.S. ambassador, and Edwin Schlossberg, the designer and author.
And she grew up, of course, inside one of the most visible families in American history. But the sources all emphasize how she really charted her own course. The Kennedy legacy is sort of unavoidable, but her professional identity, that was built brick by brick.
That's such a key distinction. And speaking of the just immense personal tragedy here, she's survived by her husband, George Moran. They married in 2017, and their 2 young children.
And her parents, of course, and her siblings, Rose and Jack Schlossberg. And knowing about her young children, it just adds this wrenching gravity to her final months. It takes us right to the heart of her last public statement.
It does. And this is where the personal and the public just merge in this utterly heartbreaking way.
Yeah.
In her final essay, she wrote about the agony of being a young mother facing her own absence. She talked about the devastating idea that her son and daughter might only know her through stories people tell them, or, just through photos.
And that vulnerability to share that on a world stage, it just reframes everything. Her fight with this disease wasn't just a private one. She chose to use it. She used it to amplify her professional message. It creates this powerful tension between, the huge public history of her family and the raw, intimate reality she was facing.
It shows she wasn't content to just endure. She chose to advocate. And that advocacy was so consistent with everything she'd done before. Her career was defined by its intellectual muscle.
You see that starting with her education. She graduated from Yale, then went on to get a master's in American history from Oxford.
That's a powerful combination.
It is. That framework, Yale's breadth and Oxford's depth, she applied it brilliantly to science and to policy.
It seems like the perfect background for a journalist. She became a science and environmental reporter, focusing on climate change, sustainability, all the really complex stuff. She wasn't just, covering press releases.
No, she was dissecting systems. I mean, her list of contributions is staggering. She was a science reporter for the New York Times, a huge platform. And she wrote for The Atlantic, The Washington Post, Vanity Fair, Bloomberg. I mean, she was a respected voice everywhere.
And the pinnacle of that work really came in 2019 with her book, Inconspicuous Consumption: The Environmental Impact You Don't Know You Have.
This is where you get the real deep dive insights. The title itself tells you her mission to reveal the unseen. This book wasn't just about recycling. It was about the hidden costs baked into our daily lives.
So how did she do that? How did she make these huge, abstract, global systems feel, tangible to the average person? What were those aha moments she was known for?
Well, she showed you how your personal choices have these surprising global ripples. For example, she spent a lot of time on the digital world. You stream a movie on Netflix, you use a cloud service, and you feel like there's no environmental impact. That's visible.
It feels clean.
But she quantified the massive energy consumption of the data centers that power all of that. That energy cost is totally hidden from you, the consumer.
And what about something like fast fashion?
A perfect example. Most people think about factory labor, but she looked at the waste. When you buy a shirt online and then return it, that item often doesn't go back on the shelf.
It doesn't.
No, because the cost of inspecting it, cleaning it, repacking it, it's often more than the item is worth. So retailers frequently they throw it in a landfill or they incinerate it. That environmental cost is astronomical and totally inconspicuous.
Wow.
Exactly. Her work forced you to confront the real cost of convenience. It connected your daily habits to massive global damage. That's why the Society of Environmental Journalists recognized her book. It changed the entire conversation.
So we have this picture of an intellectually fierce woman dedicated to bringing these unseen consequences into the light. And then that dedication to visibility takes this tragic, personal turn. Let's move to the timeline of her illness.
Her medical ordeal began right after a moment of incredible joy. She was diagnosed just after the birth of her second daughter in May 2024, and the diagnosis was a rare mutation of acute myeloid leukemia, AML. It's a very aggressive, very fast-moving cancer of the blood and bone marrow.
That is an unbelievably cruel timeline, to face a terminal diagnosis right as you're starting life with your second child. And this was only revealed publicly very recently, in November of 2025.
The sources detail how severe it was, despite the most aggressive treatments available, chemo, stem cell transplants, clinical trials. The disease was devastatingly resistant.
And this intense personal fight is what led her to publish that final statement. The essay for The New Yorker titled, "Abel with My Blood."
And this piece, it wasn't just a memoir about being sick. She used her professional skills. It was a reflection on mortality, yes, but it was also a sharp critique of contemporary health policy.
Okay, let's spend the time we need on that critique.
Hmm.
This is where she used her platform and really the tragic authority of her circumstances to jump straight into a politically sensitive debate.
Right. And this brings us to a crucial part of the source material. She openly criticized her cousin, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., for his policy decisions while he was serving in the executive branch.
And to be clear, based only on what we have in the sources, she was criticizing decisions made by the Department of Health and Human Services, which her cousin oversaw as secretary. She argued they were hindering vital medical research funding.
She was very specific. She pinpointed one area she felt was being damaged, funding for technologies like mRNA. She argued that this technology, which became famous from vaccines, had this much broader potential that was being, in her view, ignored or defunded.
Okay, so let's give the listener the context to understand her argument here impartially. Why mRNA? Why was she so focused on that in the context of cancer?
Well, what's so interesting is the direct line she drew from her own disease to this cutting-edge science. We know that mRNA is a huge new frontier for cancer treatment. It has the potential for truly customized therapies. You can, for example, teach a patient's own immune system, their T cells, to recognize and attack their specific, unique cancer cells.
So this wasn't really about vaccines at all. She was looking at the next generation of immunotherapy. She saw a path forward that needed huge federal support.
Exactly. The kind of support she alleged was being cut back by the policies of her cousin's department. Her essay was this incredibly powerful, deeply personal indictment of what she saw as bureaucratic hurdles to scientific progress. Progress that could have, quite literally, saved or prolonged her own life. It brought her whole career in science reporting and her final lived experience together in one place.
It's a textbook example of using personal tragedy for advocacy. And it's so important as we report this to stress that we are detailing her argument from the source material, not assessing its political validity.
That impartiality is vital. She was taking the ultimate position of authority, a patient facing death, to challenge a powerful political figure in her own family, demanding that policy serve scientific necessity.
So when you put it all together, the professional rigor, the family history, the personal courage, what are we left with? What is her enduring legacy?
I think it's twofold, absolutely. First, there's the professional contribution, her rigorous journalism, and her book's role in shifting how we think about the invisible environmental costs of modern life. She made science reporting accessible and urgent.
And the second part?
The second part is the legacy of her openness. She used her final weeks not just to bring attention to the human toll of a disease like AML, but to the absolute necessity of aggressive, sustained medical research funding. She advocated for the science that, in the end, couldn't save her.
Her passing is, tragically, another chapter in the long and often tragic history of the Kennedy family. But her life really synthesized that political history with scientific advocacy and personal struggle in a way that feels completely unique. To summarize our deep dive for you, the listener, we've explored the life of a journalist who connected the hidden environmental costs of our world with the need for robust scientific policy, a theme she brought home with devastating force at the very end.
And that brings up a final thought. Considering her powerful final essay, published just weeks before her death, what does it tell you about the unique authority that personal experience has when we discuss public policy, especially around issues of mortality and medical science? We encourage you to think about the weight of a battle with my blood and how that deeply personal authority builds on the advocacy work she pursued throughout her entire brilliant and tragically brief life.